This is a face of distracted driving. This is Casey Feldman. Casey was a daughter, granddaughter, sister, niece, cousin, and friend. She was kind, caring, had a great sense of humor, lived life to its fullest, and was loved by many.
She was so funny and so vibrant and so beautiful in every way.
She was smart, she was intelligent, she had goals for herself, she was really grounded, and she was someone that you knew would grow up to be somebody special, somebody important to other people.
Casey's life ended on July 17, 2009. She was struck and killed by a distracted driver while she was crossing the street in a crosswalk. He had taken his eyes off the road for just a few seconds.
It was the first time that I ever lost somebody, a friend, and someone my age. And it made me realize that could have easily have been me, that could have been my sister, it could have been anybody.
Before Casey's accident, I drove distracted, and I would let people who were driving me be distracted.
I know in high school, rushing around to activities, I'd be eating in the car and doing makeup in the car. I actually wrote a speech in the car once.
I was changing the radio station while backing out of a parking spot, and I hit a utility pole.
I would take my eyes off the road to do makeup, to text message, to use my phone.
I think definitely as a teenager, when you're first driving, you do feel invincible, and driving can become a secondary task to whatever you're doing.
You're basically operating a weapon. I think that people need to realize that they're operating something that has the power to change 1,000 lives.
No matter what it is you're trying to do in the car, it's not worth it.
When you're driving, it's not a secondary task, it is the only task you should be doing.
We must learn from Casey's death that as young people, we are not invincible.
And we learned that it just doesn't happen to other people. It happened to Casey, someone that we love and miss very much.
I think of Casey lying on the roadway after her accident, and when the police officer asked her how it occurred, she said, "I want my mom," and I wasn't there to comfort her in those last moments. What will it take for us to change the way we drive?
I've stopped having meals in the car.
I put one CD in and I just don't change it.
I make sure my purse is in the back seat now, my phone is in the back seat.
If I'm driving, that's the only thing I'm doing.
This is the picture I have in my car of Casey to remind me to keep my eyes and mind on the road. You could do the same with a picture of somebody that you love and care about.
This is an important panel because it really goes to the heart of the distracted driving problem, those who have been impacted and whose lives have been changed forever. Guests in the NOYS studio today will share personal stories that are sure to inspire you to keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road. Joining us is Brandy Nannini from the Foundation for Advancing Alcohol Responsibility, JC Good from Hang Up and Drive, and Jeri Lynch with the Conor Lynch Foundation. Please join me in welcoming our guests to the stage. Oh, that's perfect. This segment is on how victims redefine impact. During this panel presentation, we'll learn about the impact of distracted driving on real families, individuals, and communities. Our youth teams will hear how they can identify and work with affected families sensitively and appropriately, and how affected individuals support policy and affect change. First up is Brandy Nannini. Ms. Nannini has 22 years of experience in traffic safety. She's currently the Vice President of Government Relations and Traffic Safety for the Foundation for Advancing Alcohol Responsibility, a national not-for-profit organization funded by America's leading distillers to eliminate drunk driving and underage drinking and promote responsible decision-making regarding beverage alcohol. Prior to her current position, Ms. Nannini spent a decade with the National Office of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, where she worked in the public relations and public policy departments and served as the director of public policy. In this role, she managed state and federal policy activity, opened the MAD, Washington, D.C. office, and trained hundreds of volunteers in grassroots and media advocacy skills. A native Texan, Miss Nannini graduated from Texas Christian University and has been recognized by numerous organizations for her dedication to traffic safety issues. Miss Nannini is on the board of directors for the Washington Regional Alcohol Program in our community. She serves on the board of the ARC Northern Virginia, a nonprofit organization that works to improve the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. But Miss Nannini's favorite job title is mom. Please join me in welcoming Brandy Nannini.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being invited to speak to you today. And I will tell you that my experience in working with victims does not come in the distracted driving area, but obviously in the impaired driving area. And I'll tell you a little bit about my background there. I graduated from college, and right out of college, I was lucky enough to get a job at the National Office of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And my first job was as an administrative assistant in the Public Relations Department. And one of my main jobs, and this is going to date me, was to go through the newspaper clippings that were sent to us each week on paper and to glue them to pieces of paper and to make copies of them and to punch holes in them and put them in binders. So that tells you a little bit about how old I am. Anyway, before I ever was introduced to a victim of a drunk driving crash, I read countless stories. And probably about 3 months into the job, I read my first story that is forever seared into my memory. Every one of you who works in traffic safety will have this story, the first story that you remember. It might be a story with someone that you know, or it might be someone like me, a story that you will just always remember. And the story was a family that was driving back from church on Christmas Eve, and they were hit by a repeat offender drunk driver who was close to a .4 BAC. And he was driving the wrong way on the freeway, and he hit the family's car. When the father woke up from his coma, his wife and his 3 daughters were dead. And the grandmother, Nadine Milford, several weeks later after the crash, went down to Santa Fe and lobbied her heart out with then Attorney General Tom Udall, who is now U.S. Senator Tom Udall, for massive, sweeping reform in New Mexico. And that state hasn't been the same since in terms of legislation. It's always been a leader since. But I remember countless stories. And that's but one example of how impactful victim stories can be in our effort to get legislation passed. But for those of us who are working with victims who do not ourselves have a victim story to tell, it can at first be awkward and maybe a little challenging to approach someone who has had such a terrible tragedy happen to them. How do you do that? That's what I've been asked to talk to you a little about today. When you experience something like JC or Jeri have experienced, where do you start when you're working with someone who's experienced something like that? It has truly been an inspiration and an honor to work with so many people over the years, many of whom have been lifelong friends to me. And little did I know how much strength and wisdom they had given me when it came time to use the most strength I would ever need in my own life when I gave birth to a child with special needs who later passed away 6.5 years later. So my own journey through life and death gives me a different view than I had 10 years ago, and even a greater appreciation of the contributions these people have made, whose lives have been forever changed by traffic crashes. I'd like to start off with a quote from a Facebook post from a page called Transcending Loss, Understanding the Lifelong Impact of Grief, and its author is Ashley Davis Bush. I think if you were interested in working with victims, following this Facebook page is a good it's good insight into what's going through people's minds as they're grieving. Grief holds many surprises. Grief will sneak up on you during days that you thought were pretty good. It will surprise you that the pain is so deep, and it will surprise you that it lasts and changes over the course of a lifetime. But it may also surprise you that you can survive it. You can get up each morning and you can transform grief back into the love from whence it came. And that last line is the one that I think is most important for what we're talking about today. You can get up each morning and you can transform your grief into the love from where it came. Or as one of my heroes, Millie Webb from Franklin, Tennessee says, it can make you bitter or it can make you better. And each day I get up and I choose to make it better. So the two questions that NOYS asked me to talk about today are, how can youth advocates identify and work with affected families sensitively and appropriately? And how do you work with victims to effect change? And I guess I would start with, at least for me, what was the biggest question on my mind, which was, if I hear of someone who has been affected by a crash and I'm interested in talking to them about working with me, where do I start? How do I approach them? And my advice would be just reach out. Just approach them. It's the beginning of a relationship. So you reach out, you approach them, you talk to them, and you ask them. Tell them what you're working on and tell them that you think you could make a difference in that effort. And would they be willing to help you? And their answer might be, no, I don't think I can do that. Or their answer might be, I'm really interested in that, but I'm not sure I'm ready yet. Or their answer, like Nadine Milford, might be, I can't get there soon enough. Let's go today. The second piece of advice I would say is always be sensitive and caring. And one important part of that is learning about the families you're working with. Learn about the loved one that they're mourning, or learn about their injury and talk to them. Learn about their story. Let them share their story and their loved one with you. Especially for people who are grieving loved ones, they may not live on this earth anymore, but they are in their hearts and their minds every single day. And sharing that story is a really important part of remembering them, honoring them, and making sure that their life makes a difference in this world. The third piece of advice I could offer is to recognize the family's preferred role. Gently inquire about what their interests might be. There's lots of different ways they can bring their expertise to the table, and some families prefer to be front and center spokespeople, while others prefer to stay in the background and help in a more quiet way. And in some families, you might find that one is quiet and one is front and center. And I did work with one family in particular where the husband never wanted to speak about the story, but the wife wanted to speak very much, but he always wanted to be there. He always wanted to be part of it. And you might find that as they move through their journey, that those roles might change, or they might change in terms of what they're willing to do. And that's okay. Just recognize that they may change and their contributions may change as they move through their grief journey. The other thing I would mention is that recognize that grief is really an exhausting process, and try to be tuned into your advocate. For a person who's telling their story all day long, every day to legislators, some of whom may not be interested in the issue, it can be emotionally and physically exhausting. So as someone who's supporting that advocate and working with that advocate, make sure that you build in time for rest. But let your advocate lead the way. All of the advocates I have worked with are fiercely determined. And even though I always tried to get them to slow down and rest, they always wanted to work hour after hour, as many hours as it took to get the law passed, to get the job done. So you have to kind of balance everything as you move along and let them lead the way with their own comfort level. Another piece of advice is to prepare for some awkward meetings. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories here, and it won't take long. But did I mention that advocates are fiercely determined? Quite often, in a legislative situation, a legislator or a staffer is not going to agree with your position, and it may be for a philosophical reason. Those meetings can become very confrontational sometimes, or at the least very uncomfortable. And that's okay. You can be comfortable with that. Making change isn't easy. And I'll give you 2 examples. I worked with a mad national president once. We did a meeting in support of .08 BAC, and we went in to see a senator. And we had a legislative staffer meet with us, and she was a very nice staffer, but she was very firm and didn't really want to take the time to hear all the reasons. She just basically said, my boss isn't for this. There's nothing you can say to change our minds. This is a philosophical reason. It really has nothing to do with your story. And that's just, where he is and where he always will be. And the mad national president sat there for a minute and said, well, then I just don't want to talk to you. I'm just going to turn my chair. Brandy can talk to you because I just can't even begin to relate to you. If that's the way you're going to look at this issue, my son died on the side of a road because a drunk driver killed him, and I think you're very short-sighted, and so I'm just going to turn around and sit here while Brandy finishes the meeting. And the legislative staffer was horrified by her approach, and I'll bet she never approached another meeting that way again. But that's one example. And another example is, and this is one of my favorite stories, a mad national president and a vice president were trying so hard in the final days of trying to get a .08 law passed at the federal level. And Newt Gingrich, who was the speaker of the time, would not give them a personal meeting. And they sat in his office every day for 3 days for 8 hours. And they finally left on the 3rd day and saw him walking through the parking lot at the Capitol. And they chased him. And they ran after him, and they stopped him and lobbied him right there in the parking lot. So not all of the meetings that you have with your advocates will be comfortable, but they will all be memorable. And then one of my final pieces of advice is victories are very easy to savor, but defeats can be devastating. So our first defeat on our federal .08 effort devastated our whole team. And when I say defeat, what I mean by that was it was a compromise. We didn't lose. We got an incentive grant, which for us was a defeat, but it felt like we had lost. So whether you're working at the federal level or the state level, you will have times where your law doesn't pass. And you will have times where your law doesn't pass as written, and Jeri's law, Annie's law, Tim's law, which is named after your loved one, is changed. And it's changed in such a way that you no longer like it. And that is something that you're going to have to work with your advocates on and help them through. Because that is a really, really difficult thing for them. So you will have to be prepared to coach your advocates through that. It can be a crushing blow. But the good news is you will also have some very important legislative victories. And as difficult as that crushing blow was, a few years later, we were standing in the Oval Office signing a .08 law with President Clinton. And that was a really fantastic day. So there will definitely be ups and downs. And in summary, I would just say that just be mindful that grief comes in stages, and a person can move back and forth between those stages for a really, really long time. And that means that most days a person may be more able to advocate than other days, and some days may be particularly hard. So the best advice is to just be there, have a relationship with that person, be attuned to their feelings, and let them lead you. And don't be afraid to reach out. Get to know them, get to know their loved one, and care. And thank you so much for letting me speak to you.
Thank you for being with us today, Ms. Nannini, and for helping guide the conversation on how we work with those impacted by distracted driving. Our next speaker is JC Good from Hang Up and Drive. Since the devastating wreck caused by a distracted driver in 2008, Ms. Good has traveled the country sharing her story at high schools, colleges, conferences, and corporate events in an effort to prevent such horrors from touching others' lives. Ms. Good has been a guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show and has appeared as a hero among us in People magazine. She has worked with the United Nations and several state legislatures to help raise awareness and put stricter laws on the books. Since 2011, she has spoken at over 400 events nationwide. We are honored to have Ms. J.C. Good joining us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, you're still awake and getting hungry if you're anything like me. I want to bring you guys into my world to try and stand in my shoes up here. I was dealt a hand of cards that I'm not strong enough to play on my own. And so I need to share that with you so that maybe we can keep figuring out how to solve this. And it's really nice being here because it's kind of, sort of, hopefully preaching to the choir. And so to start my story, it's got to begin on what was absolutely the best day of my life, my college graduation day. I was born and raised in Amish country, Pennsylvania, and my whole life knew I wanted to go to college. I was always, admittedly, maybe a little bit of a nerd. I was always a smart kid. You know, I was an honors student. I could see how directly my work, my efforts translated into school. And so I worked really hard in high school, playing softball, playing volleyball, running cross country, being in actually the SAD Club, being one of the founding members of the SAD Club, almost ironically enough. Doing everything I could to get to college, and I got to college. A tiny little school called Muhlenberg College. It's in Allentown, Pennsylvania, so it was only an hour and a half from where I grew up, and I just had an absolutely perfect experience there. You know, again, working hard so that I could get a good job. This was kind of a really big culmination in my life. Work hard in high school, go to a good college. Work hard in college, and get a good job. And I guess by the time I got to this day, this was May of 2008, I had realized that there was this one thing in my life that was really special, and that happened to be a boy. As some of you might learn, love can do crazy things to you. I always swore I would never move to New York, and here I was getting ready to move to New York. I graduated at 10 o'clock in the morning. I was starting my job with Habitat for Humanity. I'd live in Brooklyn with my best friend for a year. My boyfriend and I would get engaged, we'd get married, we'd buy a house, and I'd have those kids I've always wanted in the blink of an eye. I had the next 10 years of our lives together planned. So we graduated at 10 o'clock in the morning, had lunch with what are now my in-laws, and left college, I guess around 2 o'clock that afternoon. As you might guess, we never made it home. The next picture that was taken of me was in the intensive care unit. It was probably about 2 weeks after the fact. We had been in a car accident. I had about half dozen broken bones from a shattered pelvis to a broken collarbone from the seatbelt. My liver, my lungs, my carotid arteries in here were all damaged. And most severely, I had a really bad traumatic brain injury, which is something that never goes away. I was on the edge of death. I was given about a 10% chance of surviving that night, and then had staph infections and blood clots and arteries that weren't strong enough to withstand those blood clots, and how everything came together so perfectly to let me stand in front of you today. But like I said, this picture was about a week after my graduation day and after that accident. It was 2 months living in this first hospital, going through dozens of surgeries to keep me alive, and then moving into a rehab hospital where I started to learn what had happened to me. Going from that honors student to being stuck in a hospital, learning the alphabet, learning how to read, how to walk, how to very simply take care of myself, from how to dress myself or how to brush my teeth, and these simple things we do every day that all of a sudden I couldn't do. And it was while I was living in that rehab hospital, sometime that August, so 3 months after the fact, that I learned, in spite of all this pain and suffering that I was going through, neither of my parents had been so lucky. Mom and Dad, Jay and Jean, never left the scene of that accident. They had both been killed on impact. 58 years old, and their lives put to an end. So I guess I want to take you kind of chronologically. Lived in the first hospital for 2 months, have absolutely no memories of that whatsoever. 2 months in the rehab hospital, getting me to a point where at least my bones were all healed enough that I could stand. Couldn't tell you who I was, or feed myself, or dress myself still. But I could stand. Physically, I was on the right path. And so I moved out of the hospital back into my parents' house. And I think that's when everything really caught up with me. You know, I kept asking where Mom and Dad were and why Mom and Dad didn't come and visit me in the hospital. And my brother would always say, "JC, Mom and Dad were in the same car as you." And neither of them made it out. And because I was so brain injured, I would say, "You tell terrible jokes. I don't think you're funny. Stop pulling my leg." My brother and I had that same conversation dozens of times because even still, the shock of being told that both your parents are dead is too much to absorb. But living in my house, starting to understand that Mom and Dad were really gone and that I was still stuck in a wheelchair 90% of the time, I started to be able to ask questions. What happened? Okay, I had been in a car accident, I get that. But I was 21 years old. I had never been in a car accident in my life. I knew Dad was driving. I knew he had never been in a car accident in my life. What happened on this day that started as the best day of my life to leave me in these shoes? And so I just got on my computer, found the news stories from that day, and found we had left college around 2 o'clock, got halfway home, stopped at a gas station. 5 minutes later down the road, we were going south, really easy, 1 lane in each direction, 45 miles an hour, easy stretch of road. As we were going south, we came to a green light, and at the same time going north, just opposite us was an 18-wheeler. He was coming to a green light too. He takes milk to New York City, drives that route every week, has a routine, always stops at the Dunkin' Donuts. And at the same time, on the intersecting road, coming to a red light, was an 18-year-old young man going to visit some of his friends from church camp, a senior in high school, a good kid, driving his mom's minivan, just talking on the phone. And that's what I really want to emphasize. He was looking out the windshield. His story has gone back and forth whether he was holding the phone or if the phone was on speakerphone. Either way, he was looking out the windshield, got to the red light and never saw it. Tried to turn left, and this 18-wheeler, according to crash reconstruction, didn't react. Took 2 or 3 seconds too long to react because he was drinking his coffee, because he was eating a donut, because why didn't he react? Hit the young man in this blue minivan and then swerved, rather than swerving to the right, swerved to the left across the double yellow line, hitting our family station wagon head on. A series of incredible events of a paramedic living right at that intersection come running out, finding both of my parents already gone. My mom, from the back seat, hadn't put her seatbelt on after we left that gas station. Ended up in the front seat, didn't even have a pulse when he got to her. My dad taking the brunt of the impact of 30 tons of milk that this truck had just picked up. Then that paramedic came to me, and I had a really strong pulse. I was still alive, but I wasn't breathing. He was a paramedic. He knew what he was doing, moved my head, and I took a gasp for air. The next intersection down had an ambulance station less than 10 minutes from the Reading Trauma Hospital that had been built just 3 years prior to this day. And so really quickly, I want to kind of take you on what I was learning. Everything I read about this day came back to that cell phone. And just for me, I knew it was dangerous to use a cell phone and drive. And this was 6 years ago. I knew it was dangerous to use a cell phone and drive when I was 16, 12 years ago. Doing the math, I'm 28, all right? Because when I learned how to drive, my parents taught me not to use a phone, that you have to pay attention to the road. But okay, that's my parents. What do they know? What kind of research has been done? And I'll really quickly share this with you. For me, it was what really sparked me. Looking at our brains, it's really easy to talk about texting and driving. That is horrifically stupid and dangerous. But we got to take it a step further. We got to talk about drinking coffee, about just talking on the phone, whether you're holding it or not. That's what this slide shows you, this cognitive impairment, this malfunction that our brains can't do two things at a time, showing you on the right-hand side that you have 37% less activity in your brain associated with the road in front of you, that your eyes might look, but they don't see. And that's this slide shows you, how it translates on the road. That when your brain isn't there, your eyes stop scanning the road. You don't see that big yellow school bus or the red light on the road directly in front of you, or the pedestrian, or anything that unpredictable driving might bring to you. And so I guess to kind of start to wrap things up, because I don't have a lot of time, I want to talk so much longer, but I'm not allowed to. I want to bring you into my world today, and this is where I really had to kind of fast forward through things. I'm going to start in the bottom left corner with, this is Ban Ki-moon, who you guys might not get that excited about. I was an international studies major in college, so this, despite the other faces you see up here, that might be exciting. This is the most exciting person I've ever met. And Ban Ki is the Secretary General of the United Nations, as he called for an end to the global epidemic of distracted driving. Like AIDS is a global epidemic, cell phones and driving are a global epidemic because it kills thousands of people every year. And working our way around to the right, Governor Cuomo in New York State, again, that pesky husband of mine, convincing me to move to New York State. But making New York State's laws some of the very strongest in the entire country. You get 5 points on your license, and fines start are going up, going to be over $200. And still, state troopers are writing hundreds of thousands of tickets a year. It's not solving the problem. It's making a difference, but it's not the entire solution. Then we'll go up to the top left. You guys probably recognize this one. Oprah has done so much work to put faces to this issue. And as you guys might imagine, getting to share my story with Oprah and on TV changed my life just a little bit. Set me on this path, realizing that maybe as much as was taken from me, I was also given something too. That I have a story. We've all got a story. And we can use these stories to make our world just a little bit better place. And then the top one up there, top right, that you guys might be pretty excited about. This was against my will, I will point out first. But thankfully, my sister-in-law kind of had the foresight when her brother proposed to me, when this man stuck by my side through everything, even when I wouldn't kiss him because I thought he was my brother, also named Jared, for months, stuck around. How this wedding day was a perfect day, but I didn't have my mom there to help me pick out that wedding dress, and I didn't have my daddy to walk me down the aisle or to give me that last dance, and how when I was your age, when I was going through college, when I was dreaming of what my wedding day would be, that was the best part. And I didn't get that because of this person's choice. And when you look at that and think about, okay, for me, that's really impactful. For my brother, he had to get the call that night, had to call our grandparents to tell them that their son or their daughter was dead, and that he had to plan a funeral for his parents by himself because I was in a coma in the hospital and couldn't help him, couldn't even go to my own parents' funeral because of this person's choice. But quickly, I want you to think about the ripples of all these people, and I don't know anything about that young man or that truck driver. How is that impacting their lives 6 months later? How is this impacting the lives of, the fact that my mom was the awesome 8th grade English teacher, and the next day was Monday, and that meant 300 kids came to the middle school. I made a list of the people being impacted from losing these two people, whether it be my neighbors or those other teachers in the middle school who are my mom's best friends. Thousands of people, over 1,000 people, of names directly that I can tell you of this ripple, how painful it is, even 6 years later, trying to deal with this absolutely sensible, that was the wrong word, and that's what a brain injury does to someone. senseless loss. And so I guess I really want to today finally kind of bring you into my life today. So lucky that man stuck by my side and I married him, and that this is what I do, much to my own surprise. Sharing this story in hopes of maybe putting you in my ripple. Isn't there one more slide? There should have been one more slide. Yeah, that's the slide I'm looking for. Because my parents gave me a really weird name, which turns out to have been a great thing, because I am the only JC Good in the world. And why I will not be JC Johnson. It's a real nice name, but there's a couple of them out there already. And I like what my dad gave me. I like that I can share this story and be not just sharing the story of someone who died, but sharing the story of how every day of my life is impacted because of this choice. Because thankfully I can stand up here, I can speak. I think I'm one of the luckiest people alive because I couldn't always do that. You know, I got myself here. I made this ponytail this morning and dressed myself, and that might not sound all that exciting, but I did it all with one hand because I can't move my wrist or my fingers or my ankle or my toes, anything on this left side that I can't really use because of a cell phone, because someone decided their phone was more important than my parents' lives, than the life I had planned for myself, trying to figure out if moving forward, a shattered pelvis can have those kids I've always wanted, if I can hold them and take care of them and help them to know the grandparents that they'll never get to meet. And so I guess kind of my last thought is that I want to be your friend. And that might sound sad. I hope it doesn't. I want to be your friend because I want you to be able, when you're in the car and you want to speak up, it's hard, I get that. But you all have a friend in me and you can share this story. And you have a friend that you can be in touch with and you can figure out ways to make this happen. And I think the last thing I have to say is that in being my friend, at least on Facebook, they only let you have so many friends. I've reached that limit. So you have to find the JC Good fan page and you have to like me. It's the same as it's all the same stuff between the two. And I want to stay in touch with you guys. I want to see what you guys are doing and how we're going to make this difference, because you're the ones who are out there. Young people are the people who have the power to change the world, to change our culture, and to make this world a better place. And thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story with us, Ms. Good. It is an inspiration to all of us to see how you turn your adversity into action and creating change. We all thank you for the work you do. Next, we have Ms. Jeri Lynch. Ms. Lynch is the president and founder of the Conor Lynch Foundation. She became a pedestrian and driver safety advocate after her 16-year-old son, Conor, was killed by a distracted 18-year-old driver on October 19, 2010, while he was crossing the street during cross-country training for his high school. Since Conor's untimely death, Ms. Lynch has advocated locally, as well as traveled the states to bring national awareness to the dangers of distracted driving. Her ongoing efforts to promote safety awareness include a PSA about Conor's story, a PSA by actor-comedian David Ketchner about the dangers of distracted driving, teen driver safety fairs, school assemblies, and her labor of love, the annual 5K run walk in honor of Conor, which takes place during the National Teen Driver Safety Week, which ironically, the same week Conor was killed. Ms. Lynch is a graduate of USC and Southwestern Law School and was a practicing litigator from 1986 to 2001. She is currently the president and CEO and COO of her family's private school businesses, Pinecrest Schools, which has 6 campuses located in Los Angeles and Ventura counties. In addition to Conor, she is the mother of 2 sons, Riley, 19, and a freshman at the University of San Francisco, and Parker, 17, who is currently a senior at Notre Dame High School. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Jeri Lynch. After which, Brandy and Nannini will be asking our guests some questions that will help us become more comfortable when working with victims of distracted driving at our own summits. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. It's great to be last a little bit because it gave me time to think, but then again, watching Casey's movie and hearing JC, your story about your parents, just makes me a little bit emotional. I've wanted to come here, and when they asked me to come here, yesterday was the 4th anniversary of Conor dying. So if I do get a little bit more emotional than I usually do, please understand. Luckily, I get to show a movie, so I don't have to speak that much. But I would like to tell you that Conor was my oldest son, and he was going to school like you guys are going to be doing. And while JC says, and you're right, I think we all agree that, the youth is our future, we want to make sure that our kids come home and want you guys to come home, want you guys to graduate. So Conor, who was a little bit of a daredevil, he was a surfer, he was a skier, he was a snowboarder, and those are the types of things that I thought were dangerous. So when he went to work out for cross-country training, and he was just going across the street to the park, I never thought that that would be the moment that he was killed by a distracted, hit-and-run, non-licensed driver. She was 18, and I didn't know anything about National Teen Driver Safety Week until I started to do some research after, and I guess that's another part of the tragedy. So we were runners, we still are runners, triathletes, cyclists. So I wanted to do something in his honor to raise awareness for cross-country runners, for cyclists, for everybody really who's on the road, including young drivers, because my youngest son was, my middle son was about to get his license too. So we had to run, and we had about 500 people come the first year. And with those funds and with the support and with sponsors, we were able to make a movie that now I can show and take to schools when I can. And it's been shown by a lot of different organizations. So I think at this point, I'm just going to show that movie, and you'll hear about Conor's story and how decisions made by people can affect so many people. And thank you. We'll show that, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit more.
Once there was a boy named Conor.
Conor was a great friend. He was a good guy, and he was one of the easiest people to talk to.
He was the most humble person you could ever meet.
He had a great sense of humor. I never, ever once saw him lose his temper.
Conor, he was like one of my best friends. He was my older brother. We did a lot together. Like, me and him did more than what I did with my friends at school.
With Conor, it's like, he's such a specific type of person. Like, it's Conor. Oh, it's Conor.
It's hard to put into words how to describe Conor. You had to know him.
Here at Notre Dame, we have a lot of people that do several sports, do different sports. And Conor was one of many who played baseball and then came over and ran and did other things.
I played with him in football, but it's when it was cross country is when we actually made a connection.
it was just a normal day at practice.
Me and Conor were hanging out after school, and it was time for me to leave. He still had cross-country practice, and I quit by then.
Him and a couple of his buddies, they stayed late at X period, the study period we have. So I kept looking at my watch, where are those guys? Where are those guys? And they were 20, 30 minutes late, and they're 10 minutes late. They're never this late, and I was getting concerned. And
I got a phone call, and the phone call was from Father Joe, and he wanted to know if I was at home or if I was at work, and that the principal was going to call me. And so I thought, oh, God, what could have happened? Did Conor cheat on a test? Did he leave school?
He was with a group of cross-country team members that were trying to catch up to the other group as they were going to train at the Sherman Oaks Park.
So before, we usually cross the street, like we jaywalk just to like cut the light because it saves a lot of time. But at this time we were just walking, and I don't know why, but he just booked it across the street. And I guess he saw one car stop.
And so he cleared the first car, and she didn't see him, and he didn't see her, and then tossed him 90 feet.
And she was going at a pretty rapid rate of speed. Didn't see Conor. It was a sunny day. He was hitting the center of the car.
Like, as soon as the car hit him, like, I just knew, like, that's it. Because the car came so hard.
I just look over, and then I see, like, you know, just a rag doll, basically. And obviously, the most surreal experience.
Got a text message by another friend, Jason, who was also friends with Conor, just with 2 words, a simple text: Conor died.
And a little bit of comfort was that he died really quickly.
We went back to school. I remember driving down Woodman and seeing ambulance lights, and immediately I knew it was real.
Up until that point, like, not many things were as quick as that. Like, some things are like a process, but that was just instantaneous. Like, it just changed my life immediately.
One time you look off the road, one time you check your phone to see who texts you. That's all the time it takes.
Because a simple action like texting while driving can honestly lead to a huge tragic event.
Conor's accident's a constant reminder of just how safe, you know, we are not. Just the daily things we do, driving a little bit above the speed limit, things like that. It's that easy. It only takes 2 seconds.
It's a lot of things. It's not looking. It's looking behind you. It's picking up something off the ground. It's looking at GPS. It's putting your makeup on.
This is what I have to say. There is no such thing as an accident. Everything can be avoided. There's not an hour that goes by that I don't think about it.
My brother.
I lost my buddy.
I lost my best friend.
I lost my son.
I lost my son. All right. Well, thank you. And, you know, as an advocate, talking about how to approach us or how to speak to us, 90% of the time we're very strong, and then there's those 10%, and there's those days and those moments that are a little bit harder. So thanks for allowing me. I do get a little emotional when I hear that. But coming here, it's very inspiring. I guess everybody's very quiet, probably wish she would have clapped afterwards, and I know it's sort of hard to do that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Helps me a little bit. This was a movie that was maybe, about our story, but made by young people like you, and I tried to help in many ways, but basically I did what a lot of people advise, and I got out of the way and let the young people make the movie and talk to the teachers. I was talk to the students, that is. So I think that it's impactful. Being here is inspiring because sometimes it's tiring. Tomorrow I'll be flying. Well, I'm flying back tonight, and this week we'll be able to speak to the freshmen at my son's high school. And tomorrow they haven't heard the story, and then we have a big run on Sunday, and we're expecting about 2,000 people. So it's a lot of work. It's very tiring. And I still see people driving and texting and doing all sorts of things in their car. I mean, I heard stories, people cooking breakfast while they're driving in Los Angeles. It's sometimes very disheartening. So being here is very inspiring. This is a picture that I put on Facebook, and like JC, I welcome you guys to look us up for the Conor Lynch Foundation. I realized last month that was the last candle I ever bought, even though my older son turned 19 and my youngest son just turned 17. Time stands still a little bit. My younger son, too, just got his license 3 days ago. So that was a hard thing. But you get through these moments, especially with the inspiration from you guys. So the next thing we did was we tried to create a PSA that we were hoping to really get out there to message. Of course, that's the most important thing we can do. So now I'd like to show a friend of mine who's a comedian, David Kochner. You probably will recognize him from Anchorman and from The Office. Made this. Now he's an actor, so this is a comedic take on a really serious subject, and maybe that'll sort of be a good way to kind of break the sadness here. And then I'll just talk to you a little bit, and we'll go have lunch. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Koechner, and I have an important message for you. When operating a motor vehicle, quit fiddling with your phone! Jenna hasn't posted a selfie in over an hour. Duck face to camera. More like dead face to camera. Oh, I love this song. I better Shazam it. Shazam, you're dead. At Daddy's Little Princess has an important message for everybody. Can everyone just stop driving like idiots? I'm trying to put my makeup on. Hashtag late for work. LOL. Hashtag swerve. Hashtag you're dead. Oh. Find out more at inhonorofconor.org. Hashtag don't get dead.
Thank you. So used to talking at schools, you have to be so close to the microphone, so I apologize if I'm a little too close there. So that was one way of trying to do something, reaching out. You never know really what's going to work, and I think you have to try all sorts of things. If I did something with a different type of celebrity, like maybe Usher, I probably wouldn't go that route. So I'm hoping to be able to do that. Right now, everybody said, friends back home and people that I work with, well, how do you want to remember Conor as of yesterday? And I said, I think the best way is reminding everybody that it's not about Conor. I mean, we can't bring him back. It's not about Casey. It's about all of you guys and trying to keep us all safe on the road and really remembering all the other people. And so this is one of the pictures that's up on my Facebook page. And at the run this year, we're going to do a memorial garden. And I think when you see that it's not just local, like in Sherman Oaks, it's not just Conor. It's all these other people across the nation. So I think we're going to try to do a PSA that really shows the critical mass, if you will, of how many people every day are affected by this epidemic. And so look for that. I think these are just a few of the people that unfortunately I know and that I consider friends of mine. We're in this club that we don't want to be in. we never wanted to be in. And so with your help, and keep in mind that, as advocates, please reach out to us. I would love for you to use any one of these pieces. Back there on the NOYS table, I put a little flash drive, and over on the table over there, there's one for all of you, and some bracelets too, because you use them however you'd like to, in any way possible. So lastly, look for us. We'll be doing the run on Sunday. I'd love for you guys to come and join us, but maybe you'll check us out online. We have a superhero theme. So we all wear superhero costumes. It's right around Halloween, so that's fun. Because I think you have to be superheroes out there to do this. I mean, and you feel stronger and you're faster when you wear a cape. So I wish I had this one picture. It's online, actually. One of my friends who's an actor from Sons of Anarchy, and he's also in Suicidal Tendencies. He actually is ironing little capes that we made for dogs. He's ironing, I know, it's so funny, ironing the little C on there. So we're inviting people to bring their dogs, because when you're walking with your dogs, you're pedestrians. And so hopefully there'll be some fun, and making something eventful, and trying to save lives. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for having me here. Sorry, I'm a little bit emotional, but I guess it's for a good reason. And thank you for the speakers that were before me. Very touching stories, which made it that much harder. But anyway, let's go have lunch, and please keep up the good work. And please take some of my flash drives, because I don't want to be taking them back home. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have time, I think, to ask a few questions of Jeri and JC. And one of the questions that NOYS wanted me to ask you both was, following the crashes that involved Conor and involved you, JC, and your parents, what were some of the things that people said to you that were particularly comforting?
Should I get a mic? I mean, for me, it was anyone who said anything. The outpouring of support was enormous, because my parents were touched by so many people, and everything, really and truly, even the cliche, they're in a better place, which I don't know if I completely believe, and all the things that didn't completely add up to me at all, just knowing that people cared, knowing that people were praying, it made a big difference for me. You up for anything?
I think I agree with you. I'm letting people in, and a lot of cards and phone calls and all those things were very meaningful. I had a lot of employees and about 3,000 students, so they're reaching out to me and seeing that I was still able to come to work and still do things was very helpful in me getting back on my feet. I think they wanted to see how I was going to be able to handle things. And I know it's a give and take. It was very hard, and I still don't love when they come up and say they're in a better place. But, you just have to try something. That was a hard period, but I think reaching out to us in any way you can, and still doing that, which you said, come friend you, and I say the same thing. So.
And then conversely, is there anything that anyone said to you right after the crash or since that was particularly uncomfortable for you?
Well, we mentioned that part. I don't know, JC, do you have anything?
We both talked about it.
Yeah, we sort of anticipated that question. Yeah, I don't think everybody's was very good. I can't remember anything standing out.
Good. And is there any piece of advice that either one of you wants to give in particular about working or approaching someone like you?
We want to talk about our loved ones. It's so senseless that they're gone. And I know for me, talking about my parents in some way keeps them alive just a little bit. and I think maybe that can make a little bit of a difference.
I know Joel always says that he has the best job in a way because you get to talk about your beautiful daughter every single day. So of course, talking about my son is great in that respect. So we'll just keep doing that and reaching out to us in that way. We're lucky in that aspect. I get to talk about him that way.
Jeri and JC, thank you so much, both of you, for your openness and your willingness to share your stories with us today and to help the youth in the audience understand and know how to work with those whose lives have been forever changed by distracted drivers.
Thank you. Thank you for the Kleenex.
These stories have been a powerful reminder to all of us about why we are here today. Thank you for your time, courage, and commitment to encouraging safe driving behaviors.
We have time for a few questions from our audience. Noah and Elizabeth will be in the audience passing the mic. Please raise your hand if you have any questions for the panelists. Don't be shy. In the back. Oh, wait, what?
Thank you for sharing your stories. Putting your stories front and center makes it more real for everyone. And thank you for your work and keep it up. Thank you.
I was just wondering for you, JC, did either the boy that was on his phone or the guy driving the truck, did either of them pass away, or are they still suffering from this?
No, neither of them were. I mean, they were injured, but not severely. Both went home and slept in their own beds that night. I guess it counts as, what did we hear, 85% that it kills the innocent person. And I don't know anything about them. They've never reached out to me, and I guess lawyers kept them away for a while. But like you say, I imagine they're suffering as well. And I guess that's just another example of the ripple, of which side of the ripple you're on.
Raise your hand if you have any questions.
Can you guys make a ponytail with one hand? Anyone? Anyone got any advice? Try and do it. Stand in my shoes for all the ladies.
Hey, I'm sorry. I just missed what you said about the 85%. I was hoping you could repeat that.
I don't remember who said it. Someone earlier today, 85% of these crashes that the person who was distracted or doing something wrong was unharmed, and it was the innocent family that was hurt or killed.
Does anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you. Let's give our panel a round of applause.